All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to our 2024 Investors Performance Group meeting. My name is Cameron Manning. For those of you guys who don't know me, I'm going to be your host for tonight. And just a quick show of hands, how many of you guys are here for the very first time tonight? Got a couple, excellent. Well, welcome guys. Hope you enjoy. We've got a great lineup of speakers for you, and we're really excited to hear from them. For those of you guys who are new, the Investors Performance Group is brought to you by the Kelly Fry team. And of course, we are a full service real estate investment team. We're here to help take you from planning out your portfolios, helping put you in touch with the right people, such as some of our speakers, all the way to buying those properties and starting to cash flow and build your wealth. So tonight we've got a pretty jam-packed agenda for you guys. We've got a lot of great speakers, as I mentioned. We'll kick things off with Kyle Green. Some of you guys are very familiar with him. I know he probably works with a lot of you in the room. He's going to be giving us the State of the Union on what's happening in the interest rate world. Then we're going to be bringing up Kelly Fry. And as everyone knows, it's a very big topic, what's going on with Airbnb. In fact, you see some material in front of you from the city of Chilliwack. She's going to be covering what's happened in her Airbnb. Another State of the Union. It's quite funny. I saw the two slides come in. I said, we got two State of the Union speeches tonight. Then we got Trevor Street from the Partners Marketing Group. He has come up with his team and his developers a very innovative way to start buying properties and guarantee some cash flow. So he's going to come up, talk a little bit about what that program is, how it works, and how it's going to integrate into some of the projects that he's actually marketing. And some of you guys will have picked up some of the info at the back on that. And then we're going to go through market update, Tales from the Trenches. We're back for another season. We're season 8 on Tales from the Trenches. I can't believe we're 8 seasons in. And our very own Elisa Donnelly is going to come and talk to us. And there was a viral video that went out there all over the internet. And she's going to talk about that and come in from an engineer's perspective. Some of you guys might have an idea what it is. Talk about the market, what's going on. And then our final guest speaker is Nadeem. He's going to be coming to us from GreenBirch Capital, talking about the MLI Select program that you can get access to. I don't know a ton about it. I'm going to let him talk about it. And then we'll wrap it up with some hot deals. So without further ado, before we do that, again, we encourage you guys, take photos, take videos, post it online, tag us in your post, use the tag at Kelly Fry Team. You can also tag myself, Kelly individually, and we'd love to see what you guys are thinking, their biggest ahas, what you are learning here tonight. All right, well, without further ado, let's bring up someone who's no stranger to the Investors Performance Group. He's been on our stage many, many times. Kyle Green, who's the owner of Green Mortgage Team. He is a mortgage and investment real estate specialist. And whether you're a first-time home buyer or a very savvy investor, Kyle will be able to help you grow your real estate. So Kyle, welcome, my friend. Welcome back. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to mic you up and get you set up. I'm going to pop that on. There we go. And I'll get your presentation up. Cool. There we go.
Cool beans. All right.
Should be good to
And
go.
then which one is this forward on?
So that one, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. This thing's too slick for me. Okay, awesome. I got to see a lot of familiar faces. It's been quite a while. I think the last time I was here, it might have been 6 or 12 months ago. I actually don't remember now, so time flies. Anyways, you don't want to hear about me. You want to hear about mortgage rates and what's going on with the industry and the market. So let's go through a couple of things. Obviously, with what's happening right now, everybody's asking what's going to happen with interest rates. Who thinks interest rates in 2024 are going to go up? Who thinks it's going to go down this year? And a few of you are still eating Subway and didn't put up your hand, right? Okay. Well, let's Q2. Okay. Well, Reiner has a very specific. And how many bips are you thinking, Reiner? 38 bips maybe down in Q2 or for yeah. So obviously 38 and a half. I didn't know they counted the halves. All right. So obviously the Bank of Canada had met yesterday and decided that they're going to pause. I don't think there's a lot of surprises with that pause. A lot of people are expecting the Bank of Canada still remain flat. And the signaling was a little bit different, however. This go around, they had implied a little bit that it's not a matter of are they going to go up any further. It's more a matter of how long they're going to stay at these levels. And so it seems like they're starting to pull off the likelihood or the perceived risk of further increases off the table and saying, We're not likely to increase rates any further, but we're not sure how long we want to stay elevated at these levels. They've been happy so far with where inflation has been heading overall anyways. I know there was a little bit of a kick up for the December numbers that came out a few weeks ago, but overall they're happy with where inflation is heading. And so the question then, of course, is what's going to happen with the Bank of Canada this year, and how much are they planning on decreasing? So before I change the next slide, I want to ask a couple of questions and see who thinks or who has an idea of what the Bank of Canada is likely to do. And by the way, nobody knows. Nobody actually knows. My crystal ball stopped working a couple of years ago, but I look at what people that bet on what the Bank of Canada is going to do, and we try to take that data, because if they're putting their literal money where their mouth is and they're betting on what they think the Bank of Canada is going to do, they probably have some decent information or at least have a pretty good idea of where things are heading. So who thinks that let's ask a couple of questions. So who thinks the Bank of Canada will be flat this year? So no changes at all. Okay, how about a 0.25% decrease? Quarter point. Who thinks the Bank of Canada will go down to 0.5%? 0.5%, okay. 0.75%? 1%? More than 1%? Reiner, all right. Our in-house crystal ball economist, Reiner Bull. And next question, when will the first decrease be? So any ideas? Just throw it a month. I'm curious.
April.
June, April. Any other guesses? Q3. Okay. So let's take a look here. Just to give everyone an idea, what this is on the right-hand side, the negative number here is how much they expect that the Bank of Canada will decrease. That's not in quarter point increments, but you can still deduce what this means. So by the way, down by 7.7 or by 17 basis points or 0.31, you can tell that the first prime rate decrease seems to be somewhere between April and June. The first month in this slide here that they fully priced in a decrease then would be the June month. So at the June 5th meeting. It was only a couple weeks ago, by the way, that the April meeting is where they had the first full priced in decrease. Now, if we look all the way down to December of this year, 100 basis points. So 4 prime rate decreases, a full 1% decrease by the end of the year. So that's what people are expecting by the end of the year. And by the way, a couple weeks ago, this was negative 120 basis points. So almost 5 prime rate decreases by the end of the year. It's going to change. It's going to ebb and flow quite a bit. But the general consensus is I've been following these charts for probably 9 months or so. The last 5 or 6 months, the chart has moved around quite a bit, but it always seems to show up at about 1% lower throughout the course of 2024. So that seems to be the general consensus. And this number will change a little bit based on inflation, et cetera. Maybe it ends up being 0.75%, maybe not. But in general, this is the expectation. And so, getting that crystal ball and looking at, okay, well, based on what the Bank of Canada is going to do, what happens to fixed rates as an example? Where are we going to go on that? Well, first of all, it's going to be a roller coaster on the fixed rate side. Fixed rates react very, very quickly to market information and market data. And so what you'll find is that because fixed rates are correlated with bonds, bond yields move up and down all the time. So inflation data comes out, it was higher than expected, bonds go up immediately. And they really have been moving quite a bit. So in December, for instance, bonds went down almost a full 1%. And then all of a sudden, just in the last couple of weeks, bonds have crept up by almost 0.4%. And so even though they're on a downward trajectory, we're likely to see a couple of bumps up. And I want to show a couple of slides from previous cycles where we've gone down in interest rates to give you guys an idea of what a roller coaster looks like. All right, here's the first one. So this is 2019. So you can see that the rate was about 1.75 to 2% for the bonds in the start of the cycle. But you can see there's a lot of movement up and down in the interest rates here. And even when COVID first hit, you can see there's major decreases and then a massive bump up of almost 0.5% in a very short period of time. So one of the things that's really important to watch as we're doing this is it's not prudent to just say, oh, I'm going to get a mortgage in the future. I'm just going to wait until the last minute to get my mortgage, because you might be at this cycle here like, oh, rates are coming down, no problem. By the time that you get a rate hold, all of a sudden the rates have gone up and now you're paying a higher rate. It's really important to get that 90 to 120 day rate hold, because then you're able to grab the lowest rate that touches in this little window of time, because it will be a roller coaster. So that was 2019. 2015 was another rate cycle. You can see all of these little tick ups. There's quite a few of them. So you're going to see a number of these. And then let's go back to 2008. Again, a rate cycle where the bond market went down from 4.5% down to 2% over about a 2-year span. But there were still rallies where the bond market had gone up. And so just an important thing to make sure that you understand too. Just because we think that over the trajectory of a year, interest rates will go down, it doesn't mean that over a month they will be lower. You could take little snippets and they may actually be higher over short periods of time. So one of the things that we look at then is, where do we expect rates to be at the end of the year? Expectations are the fixed rates would be down about 0.5% to as much as 1% down or lower by the end of the year. And as far as the prime rate, the expectations seem to be that the rates would decrease by about 1%. Now for the bond market, which impacts the fixed rates to start to decrease, something will have to happen, and that will be what's called quantitative tightening. So you may have heard of something called quantitative easing. It's a fancy way of saying that the printing presses are on and the banks are printing money and putting money into the system. It's what caused inflation. Quantitative tightening is the act of actually scooping up that money, and they're actually kind of pulling it closer to them. I won't get into all the details of exactly how that works, but basically it's the money supply either increasing or contracting. Right now, the Bank of Canada is actively tightening up the money supply. They're taking money out of the system in order to try to deflate us and deflate goods. Now, one of the things that will happen eventually is when they start getting closer to that moment where they start to say, okay, time to decrease interest rates, they will stop that pulling in of money and they'll start to just at least let the system ride out on its own. And so the bond market, for instance, we may not see fixed rates truly decrease in a large way. People are saying until a couple of months from now, perhaps in March or April. We did see a rally downwards recently, but now we're on our way back up a little bit, so we'll see what happens. To give you an idea, by the way, on fixed rates, the lowest rates are for insured mortgages. So if you're buying your own primary residence and putting less than 20% down, I know it's not a lot of you in this room, but if you have clients or children, or if you are buying your own home, a 5% down interest rate, for instance, would be closer to 5%. So buying your own home actually gets you a better interest rate. If you're buying a rental property, those interest rates can be in the mid to high fives, even depending on the lender that you qualify with. And most clients are not taking 5-year fixed rates, by the way. We have some clients that are starting to take variable or 3-year fixed. And something that I created a little while ago is a spreadsheet, which I'm happy to send out. You guys all know I like spreadsheets, right? Yeah, you guys do. Of course, you guys know I like spreadsheets. So I made one a little while ago, and what it does is it compares a fixed rate versus a variable rate. And so you can say, okay, I'm looking at maybe a 3-year fixed rate or a 2-year fixed rate, and I want to compare that versus taking a variable rate. And so what you can do is you can punch in the interest rate, and you can punch in the discount off of prime that you'd be able to get, and it'll calculate the amount of the payments, principal, and the amount of interest that you'd be paying over that time period. Now, just a quick example here that I pulled up on a $600,000 mortgage. At a decently discounted variable rate, by the way, only a few lenders have discounts up around this range, but a decently discounted variable rate with an average 3-year fixed rate. And on a $600,000 mortgage, be saving about $9,000 over a 3-year period, which is quite substantial, actually. Now, this chart, what we do is we continually update and look at what we think, or what people think the Bank of Canada is going to do over the next couple of years, and we try to chart that out. And you can always override that too if you wanted to. You can say, I'm not really sure if the Bank of Canada is going to go down that much or that quickly. And so you can change the figures in there and stress test it yourself and see what the numbers come in at. Now, the tricky part about this, of course, is that this is expecting that the rates do go down, and they do go down about 1% by the end of 2024, and probably another 1% by the end of 2025. And if they don't do that, then of course, the savings probably won't be there for the variable, or at least that number is going to be a lower amount. Now, I have had more clients of mine taking the variable now than we've seen in the past. One key challenge, however, is that a lot of the lenders that are offering deep discounted variables, the payment is fixed. So there's two different variable rate mortgages out there, and many of you have probably learned what the difference is in the last couple of years. A lot of people didn't really notice this difference between a fixed payment variable and a variable rate where the payment fluctuates every time the prime rate changes. Now, a fixed rate mortgage means that as the interest rates decrease, the payment remains the same. The amount going towards the principal increases, and the amount going towards the interest decreases. Now, what we find is that, of course, a lot of people are thinking, well, I want my payment to go down because the payments are elevated right now. And because if you're taking a rate with a variable, it's higher than the 3-year fixed rate right now. Well, of course, people are thinking, well, I don't know if I can afford that for the full 3 years. I kind of want payment relief. So the 3-year fix for those that are looking for a lower payment is of course, over the next 3 years, would be flattened out, and you'd be saving money in year 2 or year 1 on the payments itself. Year 2, maybe 50-50. Year 3, you'd be paying more than the variable in interest, perhaps. But if the payment for the variable is stuck at the rate of 6.5% or so, then it doesn't matter what happens to the prime rate. You're still paying the payments as if the rate was 6.5. You're just paying more down towards the interest. Now, as an investor, do you want cash flow or do you want to be paying down the mortgage? Yeah, cash flow, right? So in general, it's not, you don't have a huge incentive to pay down the mortgage aggressively. Usually you're looking to actually have cash flow, especially when interest rates are this high. And so that's one of the issues. There are, of course, lenders that have variables that have the payment adjust on the way downwards, and it continues to give you some payment relief. But those variable discounts are much smaller. They might be offering only prime minus 0.25%, which is almost a rate of 7% as of today. And when you can take a rate of close to 5.5 on a 3-year fixed, it's pretty hard to justify that. Just a couple of other things I want to mention for preparing for 2024. Really important to prepare your taxes properly. What I mean by this is that if in 2023 you had a really good year, then get your taxes filed as soon as you can, because then we can use 2022 and 2023 if you're self-employed, and we can use a higher income for you. If 2023 wasn't very good, then you need to buy right now. And I'm not saying that because Cam is a realtor and he's sitting here wondering when you guys are going to start buying property again. Yeah, well, he is. Yeah, but he is. But I'm saying that because as soon as you start getting into May and June, the lender's going to say, hey, we need to see the 2023 numbers. And if the 2023 numbers are lower, then the lender's going to use that lower year. So if you're self-employed, make sure that you understand that. On top of that, too, keep in mind that a lot of lenders do want to see that the rental income is showing up in your tax returns. And if you aren't filing your rental income and your rental portfolio on your tax returns, then you should probably consider doing that in 2023, because a lot of lenders won't use the income unless you do so. Next up, if you have a pre-sale, make sure that you can qualify. The number of people that just show up and say, hey, I've got a pre-sale, it's closing in a month, can you help me? It's like, I wish we knew this a few months ago, because then it would have helped you prepare your taxes properly, right? Or we would have done something different. We would have had more time to prepare and figure out a plan B. So if you have any pre-sales coming up, it's important to make sure that you get on that, and sooner rather than later, to make sure you're good. This is just a really basic thing, but eliminate the non-mortgage debts. It's really important to just be paying off those. I mean, every day we deal with clients, we look at their situation, we say, well, that car payment is decreasing your borrowing power by 150 grand. And you only owe $25,000 in the car. So a lot of the time we say, okay, you're gonna have to pay off the car and restructure things. So a lot of the time to do this is when you have a mortgage renewing, and it usually makes sense to just increase the loan and pay off these debts. It helps to improve your borrowing power so that way you have cash available to buy something, but also you pay off all the non-mortgage debts and clear that off. Another thing, shop your mortgage renewal. Interestingly, we've had a couple of banks recently have gone up in interest rate in the last week or two. And then I just got a notification while I was driving here that a different major bank just went down on their interest rates. So it's really weird, but we've actually seen more of a divergence between lenders on interest rates more in the last probably 12 to 18 months than we've seen in a really long time. Really long story short, part of the reason is that some banks did too many mortgages, and they had on their balance sheet, they have too many mortgages sitting there, and they have to actually unwind some of that and decrease the number of mortgages they have on their balance sheet. Best way to do that is just to be uncompetitive in the mortgage business for quite some time. And then we have other lenders who say, yeah, we're willing and able to take on and grow and continue to take it on because we don't have that balance sheet problem. And it seems like one of the banks that had this problem now all of a sudden doesn't have the problem. And so they're all shifting around and bouncing around, but I haven't seen, this many lenders be like 0.5% below each other for quite some time, which is surprising. And last one, create a plan and take action. For 2024, I've had a lot of individuals reaching out and saying, you know what, I think now I want to prepare. Now I want to get back into it again. But it's really important to plan for this. Times are different. It is more expensive. Rates are higher. It is harder to qualify because you're having to qualify at the rate plus 2%. So if the rate is 5.5, then you have to qualify as if the rate is 7.5. It's quite difficult and challenging. So just make sure that you're prepared and create a game plan for yourself and stick to it. Many of you know that I've been working on a project called Atlas. It is software that allows us to more easily assess somebody's qualifications. If you're an investor and you have a lot of properties, I think you know the challenge, which is, oh God, my mortgage broker wants all of my documents, and I really don't want to go through this process all over again. So one of the things that we've developed is a system where you can enter in your information into the system, and without any documents, it'll process and tell you what your options look like. So of course, it's up to you to put in good information, but without having to pull your credit and going through that, it actually gives us the feedback. So no documents, we don't pull your credit to do this, and we look at 32 different lenders, and we can deliver the report. We have an automated report system that will deliver in 5 minutes. Usually, people don't fill it in correctly, so the report doesn't usually work. People put in the annual property taxes where it says monthly, et cetera, and usually I like to take a look at it and review it. So yes, there's an automated report that can kick out in 5 minutes, but I usually like to go over it with individuals. So if you do want to give it a shot, feel free. The inputs look something like this. And then this is the information that we're looking at. And yeah, so it's pretty cool. We're currently in the process of developing a much robust software. So eventually we'll have even easier ways of interacting with it. So I'm looking forward to that. So I guess on a State of the Union, we know what's happening to interest rates. We expect them to decrease in the near future. So what do you do in 2024? It's a tricky situation. I mean, it's hard to go out and say, hey, I should buy a property right now because you're dealing with a negative cash flow position in today's market. I think that the tricky part is, well, where are values going to go in the future? And I think a lot of people are expecting that if it's not 2024, then it'll be 2025 when we're probably going to have some kind of boom year again. There's so many people sitting on the sidelines wanting to buy. And you know that as soon as the Bank of Canada starts to actually decrease interest rates, a lot of people will jump in. We saw a very short but very, very profound spring market last year for about 2 months. And it was crazy hot. People were writing offers subject free. Everything was multiple people bidding over each other. And eventually the Bank of Canada saw the inflation numbers were still not under control, started to ratchet up the rates even further, and they kind of quelched that a little bit. This year will probably be different. I don't think that the Bank of Canada is going to be increasing interest rates. They're more likely to be decreasing them. And in that circumstance, just a slight decrease downwards on interest rates is likely going to be a signal to the market for people to go in and buy again. So I guess the question is, if rates by the end of the year would be 1% lower, and on a mortgage of $500,000, you could be saving $5,000 a year. So your cash flow would be better to buy, in theory, in a year from now. I think the issue is, although the cash flow is better by buying in a year from now, what happens if the values appreciate even just 3% over the course of the year? You'd save $5,000 in interest, but you'd pay $15,000 more on the property. And I think that's the dilemma that people are in right now. And I'm not telling you to go out and buy, but I'm thinking just to consider this fact, which is that we think that the boom is going to happen and values are going to start to go up again. And it's just a matter of making the decision and whether you're prepared and feeling comfortable with going into something that will cash flow negative now, but hopefully in a couple of years with inflationary pressures on rents and deflationary pressures on interest rates, hopefully that cash flow becomes neutral in the next couple of years when that mortgage renews, if you're taking a 3-year term or something like that. So just some food for thought to think about, but this is the current reality. People are like, well, where do I buy cash flow? I'm like, I don't know, actually. Maybe Prince George, maybe. There's not a lot of spots, especially in BC, that have cash flow. So many of you already are on our email list and whatnot, but we do have webinars that we put on. So we have a monthly webinar. I think the next one is going to be about how to deal with your mortgage renewal and how to negotiate with your bank on a mortgage renewal. And then at the back today, I brought a number of my books and also another book as well, the Smith Maneuver book. So I have 3 of those, only 3. I'm running out of these books at the office, so I only bought 3. So these are at the back if somebody does want them. And then, of course, a way better book, Rockstar Real Estate Investing, great author. I also brought a number of those books in the back too, if anybody would like to grab a copy. So that's all I have. And then if I have time, I'll take questions. And if not, then Cam will boot me off.
We've got time for a couple quick questions. Anyone have any questions for Kyle right now?
So just Kyle, if you go to your Atlas system, how do you access that and what do you need to do?
Yeah, the easiest way, honestly, just send me an email. I'll send you the inputs, and then you can send it back, fill in the information, send it back, and then I can go over it with you. Yeah, it's quite quick. Yep.
Awesome. Any other questions? Anyone online?
100 basis points sounds very optimistic. What do you think?
Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah. So 100 basis points decrease sounds very optimistic. What do I think? Probably 0.75 to 1%. Yeah. I think that I think a lot of people expect that the Bank of Canada will be very wary to decrease, but I think the problem is that the U.S. is doing a lot better than Canada, and I think a lot of the information that we see kind of gets bundled up together. And Canada, U.S., and even the U.S. data is what caused the Canadian bond yields to go up in the last couple of weeks. But the Canadian and U.S. markets are very different. So, I mean, at the end of the day, though, who knows? I mean, it's tough to say, but the people that bet on this that's what they're banking on anyway. So, yeah. That being said, if you're considering variable versus fixed, it doesn't have to go down 100 basis points this year for the math to be in variable's favor. You know, you can decrease that amount.
All right, awesome.
Okay.
Well, if anyone has any other questions, of course, they know how to. Oh, sorry, Rainer. One quick one.
Not so much a question, but a comment. I was just in Dawson Creek, where I have a place, Sunset Townhouses, and talking about cash flow, those places dropped about 60 to 70 grand in the last 8 years. And I looked at my unit and I looked at the rent, and the prices are so cheap, they do cash flow. And I talked to the owner or the renter, the tenant, and she loves the place. It's really a delightful place to live for her. And I'm thinking, oh, she's enjoying me subsidizing the rent every month.
Yeah.
Another owner on one unit over bought a place at a great discount, obviously compared to 8 years ago. And I'm thinking, you'd be crazy not to buy, especially if things drop so much, they'll probably go up. Anyways, just for what it's worth, Dawson Creek took a big hit.
I think as a general rule of thumb, I mean, I kind of wanted the values to decrease more over the cycle, because then eventually it would have offset the increase in the interest rates, and I think more people would have been more active, but it's not what happened. So yeah, it's crazy.
Things are changing already.
All right, thanks a
All
lot,
right, buddy. Sounds good. Grab for that. Grab that. And a round of applause for Kyle. Thanks again. Appreciate it. All right. All right, let's keep the ball rolling here. And we're going to move into a highly anticipated area here on the Airbnb update. So as those of you guys who are regulars, we used to do a segment called A Series of Unfortunate Airbnb Events. We'd show you guys some of the pitfalls of running Airbnbs and what could possibly happen if you're a host. Well, obviously, most of us by now know that Airbnb is slowly going by the wayside. We'll see what happens over the next few months. But Kelly thought she'd come up here, give you guys a little bit of an update with her portfolio, as well as just some general sentiments of the public. So you guys are in for a treat on this one.
Yes.
There you go. So hit that one down there.
Okay. So Airbnb is changing by the day right now, and I feel like I'm the poster child for reporting it. Everybody calls me. In the last few days, not only has Airbnb been off the charts in terms of demand right now, I think because people are deactivating their listings for one thing, and all of the cold weather created so many pipe freezes that there's so many floods. So I'm getting booking after booking after booking for floods. And what's happening is that the bookings are actually longer, which is posing a little bit of a problem for me because I'm running ads simultaneously to convert units to furnished rentals, but I can't show them because they're all booked. So it's kind of a question of trading off that risk for waiting till May 1st and seeing what's going to happen. And we were just at a mixer this evening, and the first person I saw was a Coquitlam Tourism Economic Development guy. So I went right for him because I live in Coquitlam, and we have a bit of a problem with the Airbnb in my house because the laws currently on short-term in Coquitlam don't permit a kitchen for an Airbnb, and you can't have more than 2 guests. And I quite regularly have 6 to 8 because families stay there, and I'm booked quite often. So I had a long conversation with him, and he said, yeah, we're looking at the rules right now, trying to see what we need to do to change them. And I said, well, you know, the province is looking to the cities themselves to enforce this. So, you know, I really need to know what you're going to do for what I'm going to actually have to do. And he said, well, I'm going to talk to bylaw and I'm going to have them call you. And I thought, oh my God, I never want bylaw to call me. But in this particular case, I want to give them a lot of feedback on, you know, the problems this is going to cause. And what was quite interesting with the city of Coquitlam is there's only really one hotel, the Executive Inn. And I think there's a Ramada that's quite run down. So the city has a problem themselves when they host events because they can't house the people, and they know it's a huge problem. So there was like a shining light a little bit tonight with the fact that maybe they'll take my feedback in their consideration. So I'll report back on that. So currently I was operating 22 Airbnbs. I've converted only 4 of them, and 2 of them were with that MPA society that we had speak in the past. And 2 of them were actually guests of mine that approached me to stay longer. I've got quite a few ads running on Facebook Marketplace right now, which normally is the place you want to advertise, but I'm just finding it difficult to find the right people. It seems to be easier to catch them on Airbnb than it is to catch them through Facebook Marketplace. And one property I'm going to have to sell because it's an older townhouse that has difficulty on the refinance. Stuart's been helping me for over 6 weeks or 8 weeks. I've never signed a mortgage document before and waited this long for a mortgage to fund. And the actual complex is over 45 years old and it's self-managed, so the lenders don't like it at all. So I have a very high interest rate. So realistically, if I can't Airbnb it, there's no point in hanging on to this one after May 1st. So that's a solution on that, but I still have quite a few more to go. Now, back last year, I was targeted by some tenants in a building that I own who reported me to the city and went to Stuart right away to help me with responding to the city. And I told them, well, I'll convert it because I realized that it was 29-day minimum in Chilliwack. And so the city said, okay, fine. I said, I'll convert it in September to longer term, which is 29 days, because I wanted to get the summer bookings. But after trying for a few months and hearing the rumblings about what was coming with Airbnb, I just decided to forget it. I'm just going to put it back to 1-day minimums. And of course, people again came after me. And it actually escalated to the point that a reporter contacted me and then they wanted to interview me, to which I ignored them. And they ran a little story. And then I had a keyboard warrior after me who came right through Airbnb. And normally I have a philosophy that I don't like to fight about things, but I say never fight with a pig because they're just going to take you down into the mud. But in this particular case, I did. And I just brought it for entertainment value tonight to show you what happened. I went to the mud. Now, this was the reporter who basically said he was contacted and that the residents are saying that there's negative consequences associated with these type of rentals. So in the building, it's a 16-unit building. I've got 2 furnished units that have been run as Airbnbs for some time. The Airbnbs can be disruptive to the building. There's garbage left in the common areas, including being put in the dumpster. Cans, bottles are left around the bushes. Now, we regularly have homeless people in that area in our dumpsters, okay? It's not the Airbnb guests that are doing this. And we also have cleaners on site who also attend to any garbage or any issues. But he's saying that in the building, the tenants are having to give assistance to the Airbnb guests. And he's talking about the various inconveniences. And he's wondering what I would say to someone like this who's been impacted. What can people who live in these units do if they're unhappy? Now, my property manager knows who the two people that reported me are. I don't particularly know who they are, but now I have it kind of out for them. So I'm going to keep an eye out for them. So the reporter did run the article. It was just a small article confirming that I don't have a license. And I decided at a certain point, there's no point in getting a license because I'm not allowed to run it anyway under the new rules. So anyway, this gentleman, Michael, decides to come after me. And on Airbnb, as if he's a guest, he comes through the portal and he says, why are you operating multiple illegal Airbnbs? And I said to him, well, I'm advertising it for rent, but there's no takers, because there was a period a few months ago where the market was a little softer for rentals. And then I reported the inquiry as declined. I had to decline him because if you don't respond to an inquiry, you get penalized by Airbnb. So I immediately declined him and said it's not an actual booking. And then he's saying, how can it be listed when your availability shows it's booked for the next 4 months? And he tells me that this is a lie and that we're in a housing crisis and I'm not compliant. Now, this whole time when I'm arguing with him, I think this guy's a tenant in the building targeting me. I don't realize till the end of the conversation that he's in the neighborhood. So I said, well, good luck to you if you have any medical needs, because I house travel nurses and doctors who come into town to assist at Chilliwack Hospital. And there are pipeline workers who need accommodations, and they won't want to come now because the hotels have limited space and no kitchens. I hope you don't ever need to stay in a hotel in BC in the future, because the hotel cartel has greased the politicians to limit competition in time for the Taylor Swift concert. I'm not lying about the soft market. If you knew anything about real estate, you would know that there are many vacant apartments available in Chilliwack. Many of my clients are struggling to get tenants, so they will likely sell their rental stock. Now, all of this is true, but of course, he doesn't agree with me. And he's telling me I charge $212 a night, but he's factoring in the cleaning fee. And he said, who's the real cartel here? Who is the greedy one? You have completely deflected my actual question, and none of your excuses address the fact that your short-term rentals are illegal. Using Taylor Swift, a show announced 6 weeks ago, as a scapegoat for a long-term problem is a farce. It doesn't make sense. Nobody in the city outside of a select few people at BC Place with strict NDAs knew about the shows. I don't know, this guy doesn't live in my world. And this entire explanation shows you don't actually live in Chilliwack or know what's going on here. The hotels are not full here. I know managers personally. You can avoid the actual situation if you want. It doesn't change the fact you're non-compliant with local laws. Now, I said, get your facts straight. That's not the nightly rate. The cleaning fee is added. For your information, the report that the media released regarding the impact of the Airbnbs was funded by the hotel industry. So your idea that no one knew is naive. Why do you defend hotels? Are you bribed by them as well? You can see I was really, really getting in the mud now, okay? I lost control.
I'm all over it.
And I said, I'm in Chilliwack all the time. I know the rental market. I get you're frustrated by the rental market, but this is not the answer. Airbnbs provide an incredible service. The government printing of money that is never ending and limiting building permits and gouging developers has created a problem. We're going to be short 2.8 million homes in Canada by 2030, and the government doesn't have a strategy to keep compounding it with knee-jerk reactions. Now he tells me I'm on a conspiracy train, and he guesses that explains why I think the laws don't apply to me. Breaking down the different fees doesn't change the fact I'm charging $212 a night. Well, most people don't stay for one night, so it doesn't work out to that. And he's not bribed by the hotels. He's a resident who's sick and tired of cleaning up the garbage. Claiming everybody's bribed is, I'm sound entirely unhinged by him. And being in Chilliwack and living there are two different things. I'm taking up space here, trying to line my own pockets like a grifter. And the BC government does seem to have a plan, considering they have rolled out at least 5 new Airbnb policies over the past few months, including their crackdown on Airbnbs like mine, ones that are illegal, and depriving people of much needed homes. He has no idea what media report I'm talking about, from the one from New York, that when that was banned, me trying to blame Taylor Swift concert that's only 3 nights that nobody could have known about is asinine. And again, I have yet to explain why the bylaws don't apply to me. So I tell them, if this is such a terrible place to be, why don't you find a better place to live amongst the many vacant rentals? Because I'm still thinking he lives in the building. He said, I never said it was terrible. Why do you think they don't apply to you? And he keeps asking me, but I decided to act like a politician and just like keep asking questions back, right? So I said, why don't you tell me which unit you're in? Because I thought I'm coming for you now. And he said, why do you believe you have the right to operate two unlicensed? And I said, why don't you answer the question, keyboard warrior? And he said, why do you believe you have the right to speak and operate two unlicensed? I said, I hope you move out. And then he said, why do you believe you have the right? I said, we need positive people in the building. And he said, why don't you answer the question? I said, why don't you answer the question? Pot calling the kettle black. And then he said, I'm not the one violating the bylaws. I said, why do you think I'm going to talk to someone who refuses to identify themselves? I'll find out from Deepak, because that's the property manager. And then he said, you have my full name, but they don't give you the full name on Airbnb. Okay. I don't have his full name. How is not identifying myself? I live in the same neighborhood as your building. I said, take care. And I hope you find some positive endeavors that create abundance. And then I immediately contacted Airbnb and I said, I'm being harassed. I need you to block this guy. So then they did. And they said, your communication is no longer welcome. They told me to type that. So anyway, that's my update on the Chilliwack situation. So I did, in fact, receive my fine because they threatened me that they were going to fine me, but they didn't fine me until January. And it's a $500 fine. And I think you guys have a copy of it. And then they've said that they're going to fine me January, February, and March, $500. So I thought, okay, well, I'm kind of stuck now. I have all these bookings. Plus, I'd like to see how this fine gets rolled out because then I know my risk on the other areas and the other locations. So I did get the fine, and it looks like a fine from the police, like when you get pulled over. It's just a little green paper. And if you pay early, you get $10 off. I said, well, I'm not going to do that. And it's in the name of the corporation. So I said, oh, that's great. Then the corporation owes the money. And then I figured that maybe in time they'll add it to my property tax bill. I don't know, because I really want to see what happens if I don't pay. And then they said as of March, though, my fines are going to go up to $500 a week. So I do have a long-term paramedic who's in town in Chilliwack. And so I'm just going to advise that guest, I'm going to have to deactivate this, but you're welcome to stay. So that one I can turn off, but the other one's going to be a bit more challenging. So that's what the fine looks like. It's kind of comical. And it seems that most of the cities, especially Burnaby, I think, doesn't have the capacity to fine over $500 with their system that they have. And so all the cities are on the same system. So I don't know how they're going to fine more than $500 when they're saying $3,000 a day. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Apparently you have to go to court. They have to take you to court to process the fine. So it's a big headache for them as well.
Oh.
Good to know.
Good to know. So, oh, yeah, but I am guilty, though, let's be honest.
You wanted to have a quick conversation with Stuart on 55 plus?
That's right. Oh, yeah, Stuart, you want to come up? We'll do a... The one we're going to talk about, yeah. No, not mine. So...
Do you want to hold something?
Well, I don't... You're pretty loud, I think.
Okay.
Just interview him.
Enunciate. Okay.
Okay, so I contacted Stuart this week because we have a listing that we had for sale, which was 55 plus. And with the strata regulation changes that happened, it was previously actually a 45 plus. And the strata voted to make it 55, which is crazy because you just totally devalued your property, right? So our client is a flipper who's been there for a few years, though. This is what she does. And so we were getting a lot of questions from people that had adult children, disabled children, etc., trying to figure out this 55 plus ruling. And the bylaws of this complex state that all occupants have to be 55. But then when I started digging online, I came to the realization that on May 1st of 2023, the government put some exceptions in place. And there's, I think it's 3 exceptions.
Yeah.
3 or 4.
So, yeah.
So there's an exception for, oh, you know, because you're doing the video.
Okay.
So one of them is for spouses or the equivalent of marital partners, because so you can have one 55-year-old and one younger person. Children are also exempt from this ruling. There's if you have a caregiver and the caregiver is younger than 55, that's fine who lives in. And then the legacy one is if you were previously living in a complex and then they put this ruling in. So I had to call Stuart because all these realtors were calling asking about this. What happens when the bylaw of the complex says one thing and then these new government rules say another thing?
Yeah. So as most people are aware, what really happened is they started with the whole
the province came out and basically said that stratas can no longer restrict rentals. Anybody, you know, from previously, if you were looking to buy into a strata, if you wanted to rent it out, some bylaws, you couldn't rent it unless you were like one of the original purchasers or something like that. So the province came out and they said, scrap all the rental restrictions. So what some strata councils in their infinite wisdom did was to get together and to say, okay, well, nobody under 55 can live here, in an attempt to deter it from being rented out, right? Just to make it less marketable. So what happened then is they turned all these places into well, there was one famous case, some woman was writing to Mike Farnworth saying, you know, we're having a child and the strata is telling us that now that they've implemented this 55 and over bylaw, they're saying after the baby's born, we have to move out. And she wrote to the province, and then I guess they decided that they'd have to rethink their policy, and they created the 4 exceptions that Kelly mentioned: spouse, children, caregiver, things like that. So the real question is what is if the bylaws, the strata bylaws, are contrary to the Strata Property Act? Well, in this particular case, the Strata Property Act sets out what the strata councils or the stratas can and cannot do. So if there is a strata bylaw that is actually in contravention of the Strata Property Act, for example, say if there was a complete rental restriction and then they just never updated their bylaws, they just decided they were never going to update them, so they have this couple-year-old provision that says no rentals allowed, that is effectively invalid. That might as well just be struck out of the bylaw. So if there is anything in a strata bylaw that is inconsistent with the Strata Property Act, that would just be a void provision.
All
So
right.
yeah, I don't know if anybody had any questions about the rental restrictions or anything like that.
We got 2 minutes. If anyone has any questions on the Airbnb or the 55 plus, throw them quickly.
You mentioned that the rentals, my understanding is that the rentals would still apply to 55 plus as well. There was no restriction on 55 plus. It was all rentals.
Well, that's what they originally said. So the province came out and said, we are scrapping all rental restrictions.
55
And
plus
well, there's any rental restrictions, and then but there was still a provision in the Strata Property Act that talked about not even rentals, but talked about, because the age restrictions is not about, it was just about who can live there, who can occupy the unit. So it doesn't really matter if you were owning it and living there or renting it. That's what happened, is that they said except for this, you can still have strata age bylaws, and they said that and then every strata just tried to shoehorn that as a way to deter renters, really.
But they can't restrict a renter from 55 plus.
As long as one occupant is
As long as one, yeah, well, they could. If 2 occupants came in and said, we're 40 years old, then they could say, no, you can't. So as long as one occupant is over 55, they can have children or a spouse that's under 55.
At least they have to identify as over 55.
Yes, that's right. Yes, identify as over 55. But identify as 55, yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
leave that one for another
Yeah.
another court case.
For the constitutional law. Thank you, Kelly.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. Okay, so we're going to bring up our next speaker here. So this is someone who's been out. He's actually been involved with our team quite a bit. How many of you guys have bought a pre-sale from our team in the past? Quite a few of you guys. Well, the gentleman who's going to be coming up is probably the reason why you guys bought one of these pre-sales. And he's got some exciting new programs he's going to be working to show you guys on what they're doing to get creative for investors. But before I bring him up, I also just want to make sure we give him a round of applause because he graciously sponsored tonight's event and gave you guys all that amazing food. So give him a round of applause. And we'll bring up Mr. Trevor Street. All right, buddy. So I'm going to give you this here. You clip that on.
Flip it on? Okay.
Put it on. And then we've integrated your slides with mine. So you should be able to just hit the down arrow and go straight into it. So
Okay. Does anybody else love how Kelly calls Stu Stewart? Sounds a bit like his mom, Stuart. Can you come up here, Stuart? Just one comment on the Airbnb thing. If you guys do find yourselves in these conversations with any of these knuckle draggers that seem to think centralized economic planning will work, which is basically what the NDP are engaged in with this Airbnb fiasco. Ask them how the NDP's intervention in the illicit market for narcotics is going in prisons. The NDP have not been successful in intervening in the illicit market for narcotics in prisons. They are not going to be successful in intervening in our housing market. Okay? They've gone up against the lowest IQ members of our society that we keep in cages, and they're still losing. There's still drugs in the prisons. They're not going to stop this. These knuckle draggers that are advocating for these policies, what do they think is going to happen? Is the demand for short-term nightly accommodation going to disappear? Or are the hotel companies going to move in and satisfy that need? So now, instead of Airbnb, which would one day become housing, right? Eventually Kelly's Airbnbs would have been sold and turned into housing. You're going to have permanent structures placed on land that would have otherwise been developed into condos. It's now going to be hotels, right? You guys picking up what I'm putting down? Right on. That's not what I came here to talk to you guys about today. So this is actually the brainchild of my wife, Sarah. We wanted to create a product for investors. As you guys know, Cam and myself and Kelly, we are not in the real estate business. We're in the wealth building business. Real estate is just the avenue that we use to help people create wealth, right? So, we see a lot of people, especially on my side of the business. I run the Partners Marketing Group. We're a pre-sale marketing firm. They've based their business models. They've built their wealth building models around flipping, around buying condos with the intent to assign them. And for me, that's just not a very sound wealth building strategy. And we'll talk about that in a little bit further on. But we run into this problem in Greater Vancouver where people want to build their rental portfolios, but the cash flow just isn't there, right? So we created a product, we created a company to help you guys fix that situation. And the company is called C4 Financial. The product is called the Essential Investor Protection Program. Now, this program is being offered exclusively at Gabriel Central Surrey condos. This is a development just outside of Central Surrey there. 10-minute walk to the King George SkyTrain station. Thank you, Cam. Okay. Fantastic high school right next door. And all of Surrey Central's amenities are right there. Most of the homes that we have available under this product, they start below $600,000, junior 2-bedroom suites. Great value. So the two things that I hope you guys get out of this presentation tonight is how easy the program is and how simple it is. So we're offering this on 16 homes at Gabriel. We want this program to grow. We want it to continue. And the only way that it's going to is if you guys are seeing that it's valuable, that it's easy, that it's simple. Because in reality, I can do all the pitches in the world I want. But the best advertisement I'm going to get for this program is you guys telling all your investor buddies how you cashed in on it. Right? So this is, like I said, the Essential Investor Protection Program. I was saying I would talk a little bit about flipping versus being a landlord. I've never flipped a single property in my life. Every single pre-sale I've bought, I think I was saying to Stu, we're up to about 18 units now. I've never flipped. And I cringe when I think about if I had cashed in when that opportunity was there. You buy a pre-sale, the market's come up, you're looking that check in the eye. And I'm so glad I never did, because all of those rentals have been fantastic investments all throughout the time that I've held them. Flipping is a long-term strategy. To me, it just doesn't make sense. Maybe you put 50 grand up on a $500,000 deal. You do really well on it. In 2 years, you've turned that 50 grand into 100. Okay, great. Now you buy two. Now, over the next 2 years, maybe those two don't do as well. They go up, you walk out of each of them with 25 grand on top of the 50. So now you're at 150 grand. You can't keep doing that, right? Because eventually you're going to get caught between the moon and New York City, aren't you? Right? So It's just not a long-term strategy. I mean, what we see from the data, because we're required to collect all of the data on assignments, what we see, the data is very clear, is that 82% of all of the successful arm's length assignments that we see at our sites, they happen within that 60-day window leading up to completion. So if the market isn't cooperating during that 60 days, so the benefits of the EIPP, guaranteed positive cash flow. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Property management, tenant placement, fully assignable before and after completion. So if you do decide on a flip, you can send the EIPP with it. And if you sell within 2 years of completion, that's a really healthy add-on for the guy you sell it to. It's free on select homes, my favorite 4-letter F word. And there's developer oversight. So at any time, the developer can come and inspect C4 Financial's records to make sure that everything's on the up and up. Guaranteed cash flow. This is not a decorating allowance. I see this time and time again where you see developers or marketers and they're saying, oh, we've got this interest rate buy down. I was like, I didn't know you could buy down interest rates. And then when you look at it, what it really is just a decorating allowance, or it's a closing credit. So Kyle, what happens if you go for a $500,000 loan and the bank sees that you've got a $10,000 closing credit on there? How much do they advance? They reduce the purchase price by 10 grand. Not that fun, is it? Not that exciting, is it? No. So this is not a decorating allowance. This is a tripartite agreement. Look at Stu. He's so happy I said that right. It's a tripartite agreement. Standalone agreement that's outside of the real estate contract between the builder, C4 Financial, and whichever one of you fine folks are fortunate enough to grab one of these suites. So tripartite is a 3-party agreement, okay? It's not a decorating allowance. You buy a home to which the EIPP is being offered. During your right of rescission, you'll receive your EIPP contract. Report any carrying costs in excess of the rent through the webpage. And again, I wanted to illustrate to you guys how easy this system is, how simple it is. And so, like, this is actually someone filling out the portal here. Obviously, it's just, my guy Dylan, because this building isn't built yet. You'll notice a couple of things here. So what they're asking for is the net rent, and they're asking for strata fees, mortgage payment, and that's it. There's more to it than that, of course. We've included more of that in your carrying costs. We know what's involved with being a landlord, but I'll explain why that is in just a sec here. Maybe I won't. So what are carrying costs? How do we identify what carrying costs are? Just remember the word STIMP. We created this handy acronym for you guys. Nice and easy, right? Strata fees, taxes, insurance, mortgage, property management. That's what makes up your carrying costs. If your STIMP is higher than your rent, you submit through the portal, and the goal is to pay within 2 business days. The contract says 5 in case someone's sick. Pretty simple, right? Strata is this. So breaking this down even further again, because the first thing I would want to know, if I was an investor, someone was pitching this to me, I would say, well, that sounds too good to be true. So what are the actual details here? Strata, it's the strata fee. Taxes. So most of these homes will not have assessed values after completion, right? Because they're brand new titles. So we use the city mill rate up against the purchase price. Who knows what a mill rate is? Does anybody not know what a mill rate is? So one person does, but nobody doesn't. I'll explain it. Thank you. So the mill rate is, was that?
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle. So everybody knows your property taxes are based on your assessed value, right? Your assessed value goes up, but what do they times that by? in order to determine how much your property taxes are. That's the mill rate. Every city's mill rate is different. Every year they change the mill rates around a little bit. That's all that is. Insurance, again, we wanted to keep it simple. We just pay $60 every month, right? Nice and easy. $720 a year is, roughly what I pay for my rentals. Mortgage, the lesser of 30-year amortization, 20% down, 5.44 per annum, and the actual mortgage payment. And the reason that we have that in there is so that you can't borrow money from your own company and charge yourself 8% and then submit a claim for that, right? Property management, tenant placement, and property management. So that's what makes up the stimp, you guys. It's nice and easy. There's no smoke and mirrors here. We want guys to take advantage of this program because, again, we want you ranting and raving about it. We're selling 16 of them at Gabriel. If this is a program that takes off, we want to start offering it more on more of our suites, right? What's the catch? Of course, there's a catch. We assign the property manager. So you can't hire your uncle's, best friend to manage the suite for you and then start claiming because it's vacant, right? The policy limit is $20,000 or 2 years, whichever comes first. Okay, just like any insurance product, there is a policy limit. It's 20 grand. You may be asked to provide evidence for your reporting, mortgage payment, strata fees, that kind of thing. Now, the language of the contract, it states that C4 Financial may withhold payments of those stipends if we've asked you for proof and you haven't provided it. Again, in reality, we want this to be very customer friendly, very easy, very simple. So if we asked you for evidence of October's, we would probably just pay October's, but then withhold November's if you hadn't given us the papers yet. Make sense? Questions?
There's a lot of questions. Oh, any online?
Pardon me?
How is it actually?
How is it actually funded? The builder pays for the policy. The builder pays, yeah. Cool.
Well, it's clear as day, I guess. Quick question that I have, just trying to turn my mic on, is so the guaranteed cash flow then. So if you're running a negative, then they'll cover up to break even. Then this is my assumption.
Break even plus $1.
Plus $1. So you cash flow $1.
You cash flow $1.
All right.
Yeah, we had to add the dollar is actually in the contract,
Right.
so that we could advertise guaranteed cash flow.
Right.
Guaranteed, guaranteed break even doesn't sound that sexy, right?
Right. Right. So you get $1. But you know what? The nice thing about a program like that is if you are in a situation where your mortgage or anything else comes in and is causing you to be in that negative, break even in BC is still a phenomenal opportunity to be in because of the climate of our real estate, right? Holding on to a property for the next 5 years, even if it's a break even through a program like this, you're still going to benefit long term through owning real estate in BC. So
actually, if you do the math, even maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but even without this program, the returns on your down payment through the mortgage being paid down and the average annualized appreciation, you're going to get a better return, even if you have to subsidize it in most cases, than you will if you just put that money in like the S&P 500 or something. Yeah. So this just makes it a little bit better for you.
Awesome. There we go. I was waiting for the accountant. Can you just repeat the question?
Kelly's asking if you don't go to the policy limit, it's kind of the same thing as if you do not crash your car this year, which I know you're planning on crashing your car this year. But yeah, no, the policy lapses, like I said, at either. It already has.
Ray's laughing over there because he knows one of the accidents she was involved in.
Did you actually crash your car already? The police hit you? That didn't even sound convincing.
She got sideswiped by the cops doing a chase.
Doing a chase. They are really cracking down on those Airbnbs, eh? Yeah. Everyone's got a high interest mortgage. Mhm. It's not break even. You get a buck. Yeah. You know what, Kelly, you know what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to favor, some of us, poor souls that may have had to go to B lenders back in the day, that kind of thing, right? So.
Who sets the rental value on the property?
So we assign you a property manager. In reality, you're going to work with that property manager to set the rental rate. Obviously, it's in our best interest and in your best interest to have the rent as high as possible. It's in our best interest to have the rent as high as possible so that, we're having to pay out less of a stipend. It's in your best interest because, the program does lapse. You want to have a higher rent as well, right? We don't want to, the property managers don't want to put some joker in there because then they're going to get evicted and then we're going to have to pay higher amounts for rent, right? For stipends, pardon me, right? Because we got to pay the full pop if it's vacant, right? Make sense?
And the property manager is paid by you and charged back to the client.
So the property manager is going to charge you, right? But in reality, that's included in the stimp. So if your carrying costs are $1,500 a month, including the property manager's fees, but your rent is $1,800, well, then you're paying them is $100 a month or whatever, right? In reality, most of these suites, they're not going to cash flow without this program. So you're going to be able to claim that up against your negative cash flow. Does that make sense? So if your costs, your mortgage, your property taxes, your insurance, the property manager's fees, those equal out to $2,400 a month, right? But your rent is only $1,800. You can claim for $600, which would include the property manager's fee of $100. Make sense?
Charles?
The dollar? Yeah.
Is it on? You would need to speak to an accountant about that. I don't understand why it wouldn't be covered, why it wouldn't count as taxable income. But speak with an accountant. I don't know. Kelly might know. Yeah, the rent is just zero. Yeah, so in that case, it's going to be a very big stipend that C4 Financial is going to be paying.
So it's in their best interest to get it rented as well.
Yeah, again, like we want this program to be long-term health, right? So I'm in the business of repeat customers.
We both, absolutely.
Right? So, yeah, we're in reality, I mean, that property manager is going to have an agency agreement with you guys. They don't have an agency relationship with us. The language in the contract, just, if you are, turning down applicants that, don't smoke, have no pets with an 800 credit score and a good job, yeah, we're not paying the stipend, right? But that's why that language is in the contract. But in reality, it's going to be you and the property manager working together.
Do you have to sign in for a certain period of time in the contract, or is it open contract that you can get out anytime?
With the property manager?
Yeah, no, with
this?
the program.
Well, you can just stop claiming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's free. So there's no cost to you. So you could just stop asking us for money and we'll stop sending it to you.
But you're bound by contract. So is there a rule in there that says you can't?
Well, let me put it this way. If you send me an email saying you want out of this deal, you don't want us to give you free money every month anymore, we will 100% tear up that contract. Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
But the contract, like I said, so if you hold on to the property for a year and then you do go to sell it, you can pass off the rights under that contract to the next buyer. Right? So, but yeah, 100%, we will let anybody out of their contracts that don't want to be in them.
The policy is paid for by who said again?
By the developer.
All right, awesome. Well, if there's any other questions, Trevor's going to just stick around for a little bit.
Yeah.
Perfect. So if you guys have questions, you can hunt them down to the back. If you guys have any questions afterwards, give us a shout. We've got access. He's already sent, his team sent us all the info, and we can definitely get that to you for those 16 properties as well. So, all right, buddy. Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thanks
you.
so much.
Thank you.
I'll grab that, grab that. Beauty. Thank you. All right. Told you it was an exciting day today. We got some really unique stuff that we're bringing to you this week. We're really trying to kick off 2024 strong. Now with 2024, we are going to go back to something that's been a tried and true segment of ours, and that's the Tales from the Trenches. Now, Tales from the Trenches is a segment that we came up with a long time ago where we wanted to show the other side of real estate, what you need to know if something goes wrong, right? When you go to most seminars, everyone talks about, the sky is blue, you're going to make so much money, you're going to be rich, you're going to be retiring on sandy beaches. Until you buy that first property and that first toilet's plugged, or, in Kelly's case, multiple tenants die or something like that. So we're going to show you guys situations that come up that you should be aware of, how it's going to impact you, and either one, how you can either avoid it all completely if you can, or two, if it's unavoidable, stuff happens, how you handle it, and maybe learn from someone else's mistake. Now, in this case, we had a viral video that happened. It got picked up and went everywhere. We're talking Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, everywhere. And I'm not really an expert when it comes to engineering. And so we thought we'd have our engineer, our resident engineer, talk about this, show the video, and give her perspective as to what happened and what the developer is going to do in this situation. So without further ado, let's bring up Elisa Donnelly. Come on up. And I'm going to turn the mic over to you. There's your microphone, and then just this button right there at the bottom.
Perfect. Okay, I can just clip that here, right?
Yep. There down.
Okay. Okay, how do I play the video?
Just hit the button one more time.
Okay. So here's the video. So I think many people seen it on Instagram, TikTok, went viral. All right. So this is a shoring failure. I've got many questions from my clients. I've got many calls actually that day. It's like, well, what does it do to the building? What happened? Actually, the guys I used to work. So actually, this is what I specialize in. Excavation, shoring design, and deep excavation. So I worked in this industry for over 10 years. I design these excavations, I oversee the installation, and so on. So I actually got a call from the guys who worked on this site saying, oh, have you seen this? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, what happened, guys? So, and a lot of my clients asked me, like, well, what's going to happen with the building? And I was like, well, nothing going to happen to the building because this is not a part of the building. This is just a temporary excavation shoring. So I decided to, first of all, kind of go over what is the shoring. So very simple. So excavation shoring is basically used to support excavation cuts. So when you dig a hole, the soil doesn't want to stay vertical. It always wants to collapse at some angle. So that's why we're going to install some sort of a support system. So here, just a very schematic, that's a section of the shoring. So here's your face of the shoring, and this is what's behind. So what you guys see is the failure of this shoring face. In Vancouver, in BC, well, in Vancouver and Fraser Valley, so the very popular system is a shotcrete wall with a tied back anchors. And that's what we see. So this sub-horizontal lines, those are the anchors. And this square is the soil that wants to slide into the excavation. So we drill some horizontal anchors. We grow them with a grout, so it's just a type of cement. And so that's what holds the excavation from collapsing. So the geotechnical engineer will design how long are the anchors, what's the spacing, what kind of reinforcement we're going to put in the face, so and so on. So once design drawings are issued, so we get a subcontractor, usually, a shoring contractor, right? So, and we start excavating. So you all guys seen the excavations sometimes are huge. So they could be 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet deep. So it's not happening like in one shot. So it's a very tedious process. We take excavation in lifts. So we'll come and take 5 feet down. Then we leave a berm. And then this is the drill rig. So that's what we use to install anchors. So it will drill a hole. We drop an anchor, so it's basically just a rebar, and we apply grout. Next day, the guys would come out, and we cannot just take the berm in one shot. We have to do shoring in sequence. So usually it's 2 to 3 days sequence. So we'll excavate a section, install the panel, so you can see there's a bunch of reinforcing steel, and we apply shotcrete. Shotcrete is just type of cement which applied, it's sprayed on. So, and again, next day we'll come and take this section and so on. So once the shotcrete is cured, so it's hardened, next day the guys would come and tension the anchor. So we have to apply a load. And usually, before you tension the anchors, you have to test it. You have to take to the test load, which is higher than design load. An engineer or a technician would come out to the site and check if you do this. You have to do it with every anchor. There's hundreds of anchors. You have to test all of them. So that's a called proof test. But we also do a performance test when we actually measure the deformation. So I'll come out to the site. I'll bring my dial gauge. I'll do a setup. It's a longer test. It's about 15 to a half an hour. The guys hate it at the site. Like, can we do less of those? I said, absolutely not. So we'll measure the deformation in the anchor, and then I can back calculate and check them if they install the anchors within the design drawings. If they, let's say, if I can calculate what's the length of the anchor, how much growth we have, and so on. So that's how it's checked. And this is actually end product. So now we see, so the shoring is installed, and this is excavation for the foundation of the building. So once this is completed, so we're going to erect the foundation walls, the shoring becomes obsolete. So it's no longer needed. So it's not part of the building. So it's just a temporary structure. So back to our story. So what happened? At about 11 a.m. on Wednesday, November 29th, a worker from Vancouver Shotcrete. So Vancouver Shotcrete is actually a very good company. I worked with them for over 10 years. Good guys. So notice there's some pebbles falling off the north face of excavation. It's not supposed to happen. So, and he looked it up, and he's like, yeah, there's something raveling from the top of the excavation. And of course, he went to general contractor and said, look, this doesn't look right. And they did inform Jet Pacific, who was a designer of this excavation. I have to say, in my career, I did do a peer review on failure, which, again, the excavation was designed by Jet Pacific. I think it was a Main Street. So that's not the first failure for them. At 1:30 p.m., cracks start forming. So we actually can see horizontal crack on the face of the excavation. And about 5 o'clock, final collapse. So it's actually took quite a bit of time to collapse, which is good because these things are very dangerous. So you have to understand, like in this size excavations, there could be up to 50 people working. So there's a bunch of excavators, there's shoring guys, there's forming guys, there's concrete guys. So there's engineers, there's technicians. So it's quite dangerous. These failures can happen rapidly. So there is no time for people to evacuate. So the collapse, so once it's failed, so it actually was failing over the night. And when this happens, so there's only one remediation you can do. So there's only, usually you start to backfill in the excavation. So you're placing material back against the failure to just provide that confinement so soil doesn't fall out of the hole anymore. And that's what they start doing it. So they're basically just bringing trucks and trucks of soil and start dumping into the excavation to build this backfill. So it's going to be at 1-to-1 just to prevent material from falling out. And that probably took them, I would say, 24 hours, maybe more. It's very tedious process. So when I looked at the video, of course, I started thinking, so what was the reason of the failure? Because, well, it's a big failure. Doesn't happen every day. So And one thing really jumped at me when I looked at this video. I don't see any reinforcing steel. Maybe it's the quality of the video, but I noticed there's just mesh. Usually when it rips, you can see a part of it sticking out somewhere, and there was nothing. The second thing I noticed, all the anchors are still intact. They're right here. So that means anchors are holding. So there's usually two reasons. There's two categories why it's failed. Lack of workmanship or lack of, inadequate design. So, and kind of like, again, I don't have the information. I haven't seen the drawings. This is just kind of what I think happened. Yeah, as I said, there could be a lack of reinforcing steel, or the shotcrete was too thin, or there was inadequate design. And inadequate design could happen for two reasons. Well, geotechnical engineers based all their calculations on the soil assumption. And in this area, it's actually comprised of glacier till. It's the guys in construction site would call it hard pan. It's really hard soil. It's hard to dig. It's almost can stay vertical when you excavate. So it's, it has a good quality. So I think the designer went and said, okay, it's glacier till, so I'm going to design it with these parameters. But when I looked at the video, the material is coming out of the excavation. It doesn't look like glacier till. It looks like something loose. Maybe it was a backfill. And it could be because this is very busy area. So you've got a SkyTrain line here, and you probably have a bunch of utilities going in here. So you probably have a sewer line, water line, and when those utilities been put in, you do an open cut and you backfill it. And the material, they backfill it, and back in the 80s, let's say, it wasn't engineered fill, it wasn't compacted, which is dumped in there. So yeah, material which came out of this looked like a fill to me. So if someone designed it basically saying, we're going to have a really good material, very strong, and then, in fact, you have a very loose material, so you get a shoring failure. So inadequate assumption of soil condition or inadequate design, they just didn't put any reinforcing steel and hope for the best. Both can happen. So finally, they backfill it 1-to-1. Here, they secure the slope. So it's safe now. Now they have to do assessment, either any damage to SkyTrain stations, right? So the SkyTrain line, adjacent buildings, because you lost all that soil. So you lost the confinement, so building can settle, adjacent building can settle. The main concern I think they have is the sewer lines and water lines, because they're not designed to be suspended in the air. They're designed to be supported by the soil, so they can crack and leak. So that's not a concern they would have to address. And of course, now they have to shore again. So that's going to take quite some time. So what's going to happen to the builder, subcontractor, engineer? Well, engineer will be investigated by Association of Engineers and Geoscientists of BC. WorkSafe BC already in play. They'll ask a bunch of documentation, so everything is going to be reviewed, and they will try to determine, is it a failure because of the design, or is it failure because of the installation? But I mean, they'll bring everyone and try to sue everyone. So it's going to be fun. And of course, they're going to bring another company, a third-party consultant, another geotechnical engineer who's going to look at the design and try to figure out if it was adequate at the beginning. Okay, so, and what's the consequences for the actual development? Of course, construction delays. It's going to take quite some time to get to that depth again, and increase of construction cost. So, yeah. But anyways, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and yeah.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll grab both of those back there. I need the...
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. All right. So again, that is another exciting Tales from the Trenches. Again, we wanted to show that because obviously it was big news, and we have a geotechnical engineer in-house that deals with this. So we thought it'd be fun to kind of highlight that and see what actually happens. All right, we're switching things up a little bit. We're going to do the market update now, and then we're going to bring on our final speaker of the night and then wrap up with hot deals. So let's talk about the market. We're going to try to run through it pretty quick. But first and foremost, This is one of the lines. Housing market sales closes out 2023 with the lowest annual record in 10 years. Now, it's interesting because we had a bit of a roller coaster, and Kyle talked about it earlier. It was a bit of a roller coaster through the year. We had sales picking up early in the year. We talked about that a lot. Then it dropped out, and it all correlated with, do they hold the rate? Do they increase the rate? Do they hold it again? We're back in that holding period. So the numbers we're going to show you guys right now are obviously the end of December. It's wrapping out for the rest of the year. The numbers coming in through January are going to read a very different tale, I think, as we get into next month. But we're going to go through it at a high level here real quick. Again, we're going to talk about inventory, what's happened with inventory, and you can obviously see while this goes, what the direction of the inventory is. Does this have a light? There we go. As we can see here, inventory, especially in Greater Vancouver and Fraser Valley, is coming back to that dropping off a cliff, right? We saw, in fact, the numbers don't show this here, but there was a significant drop off in inventory on December 31st and January 1st. Now, a lot of times what happens is agents will set their listings to expire at the end of the year, and then a ton of listings get wiped out of the market, and then some will start coming back onto the market. So January will be interesting to watch what's happened, but you can see that trend line. Now, anytime inventory is going down and we see the opposite start to pick back up, what do we start seeing eventually happening? Prices maybe start coming back up. So let's take a look at the sales. Now, sales, because we saw interest rates come up, so we had a big spike in the year when interest rates were when they were held. Then obviously fixed rates had come down, fixed rates came back up, they increased rates again. We saw sales coming down, but you can kind of start seeing it starting to level out here. And this is where I say in January, just based on our experience that we are feeling in the market, we're seeing every day with our own listings, we anticipate that sale trend line is going to start to curve back. We've kind of gone down, up, down, up. That's that roller coaster again. And then finally, we've got prices here. And the prices, voila, there we go. You can see at the end of the day, they have had their little bit of a roller coaster as well. But when we're talking about, the difference between December 22nd to the end of the year here, we can still see in most of these categories, prices were actually up by the end of the year. And that's due to the fact that we had that upward pressure through the spring market of 2023. It pushed values back up quite a bit, that suddenly, even while values came down at the back half of the year, we still netted in our pocket a little bit more value than what we started with the year. So again, as we go back into this spring market, we're seeing very similar trends. We talked about it when they had held the rates in the spring last year. Sales picked up, inventory was low, put the prices up. You can see it right here. We're back into a very similar situation. We have had 4 interest rate holds now. And Kyle obviously talked about what his predictions are. What do we anticipate is going to happen when rates start coming down? That pent-up demand, that fear of missing out, is going to put buyers back into the market. We're going to see that low inventory that we saw on the first slide is going to be really impacted when sales start to pick up, and we'll see that price start to increase. You can actually see Chilliwack actually did pretty good from November to December there. They had a decent boost there. All right, we're going to highlight a few specific markets. So we got Chilliwack here. Again, I did say Chilliwack did pretty good. Hey, I mean, over last year, they're up 24%. They're back inching towards that $1 million average mark for the detached. Listings are up, but I mean, 209 is not that much. Townhouses are down in inventory and condos, up 17% and up 4.9. So again, we started the year off strong and we still ended it above where we were in 2022. Abbotsford, same story, right? We're up 13.9%, 5.5 on townhouses, condos, 13.5%. And inventory, you can see, is going down, up a little bit last month in detached, but down across the attached category. Mission up across the board, 32% townhouses, but again, not a lot of inventory to draw from in these markets for the attached. Trevor and his colleagues in the development world are definitely adding to the inventory out there. They've got some great projects, and we're going to talk about one of them later on today. Down a little bit in the Mission market on detached, up across over last year again. So net up over 2022. Surrey up across the board. Condos up 21% over December 2022. So we definitely saw the impact of that initial start of the year where prices really ramped back up. And obviously they didn't come down too much over the back half of the year. Maple Ridge up across the board, not double digits, but did pretty well. I mean, an up over year, 7% or 5% is still a very good gain. Most places in Canada don't experience gains of 5% annually per year. So even if you're only gaining 5% in a market, I would say you're still doing fantastic year over year. Up a little bit on detached, up across the board here. There's quite a bit. I mean, condos. The one thing about the condos in Maple Ridge, we're starting to see a similar effect. We've talked about Langley before, how there's a lot of development in Langley, and sometimes you'll have a new project that allows assignments, and we have a flood of inventory hit the market on assignments. Then the development closes, you see a lot of inventory, so it's very roller coastery. Maple Ridge suddenly has a lot of buildings putting up assignments right now. So that's why we're probably seeing a bit of a boost where suddenly the developer says, okay, you can go and assign your property. And Trevor said it himself, and I completely agree. The best time if you are going to assign your unit is that around 30 to 60 days out from completion. We see a lot of buyers who buy a pre-sale and then they want to put it up on the market within 6 months. The thing is that you don't have enough time on the market to generate any actual profit at that point. And the average buyer who's going to buy that assignment, they want to see a project that's near completion. Right? They actually want to say, hey, I probably will be moving into that. There's a reason why I didn't buy it back when it was a pre-sale. So keep that in mind if that is your strategy. I agree with Trevor, though. If you can close and hold on to it, there's some great opportunities long-term for doing so. And then finally, let's look at Vancouver. Vancouver is up again, 10%. Inventory is down. Townhouses up a bit. I mean, not too much on condos, not too much on detached, but 1.5%, 7%, 10.2. So we've seen that across the board from GVRD all the way out to Chilliwack. And again, you're watching those trend lines. That's very important as investors. We have to be analyzing this. We have to be looking at what these trends are. As most people say, you can't actually time the market, which is true, but you can look at what the trends are doing and make educated investment decisions. So as we see that the market is showing the signs that buyers might be coming back into the market, I think we've got a window of opportunity as investors to maybe take some action, lock down some properties, and maybe benefit from the fact that the buyers are going to come in probably in March, April, or when they finally drop that rate, probably come in bigger droves. So I recommend go out, start putting offers, see what sticks, run your numbers, and find properties that match your investment style. So that is basically it for me on the market update today. We are going to move into our keynote. How many people are interested in investing in multifamily projects? A few people out here. Excellent. Well, we're going to bring out someone who's going to give you guys a program that is built from CMHC. I don't know a lot about it. It's the MLI Select program. Nadeem is the founder and president of GreenBirch Capital, a mortgage broker firm specializing in multifamily construction and commercial real estate financing. He's got over a decade experience in the commercial industry, underwriting and funding over 4 billion commercial mortgages. And in 2023 was involved in funding 89 multifamily and commercial mortgages. So we're going to bring him up on the screen so you can go ahead and pop him up. We're going to stop my share screen. And I'm just going to, Nadeem, you can go ahead and unmute there.
Fantastic. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you, absolutely. So I'm going to bring you up on the main screen so they can see you as well. And with that being said, you are on the screen. So if you have slides, feel free at the bottom of the thing. It says share slides. You can go share screen and show your screen. And I'm going to let you take it away.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. Bear with me a moment. Let me know if you guys can see this. Is it working? Is that working? Can you guys see this?
We can see you. Absolutely. You got your screen.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me, guys. Really nice to be here. Appreciate you guys being here, and want to also commend you guys for all being dedicated to what you're doing and spending the evening here. So kudos to you guys for being as dedicated as you are. So as mentioned, I'm going to go into the CMHC MLI Select program. Now this is an incredibly popular program that's designed for 5 or more unit multifamily properties, and that's the definition of multifamily. And I'll get into more details here. So really excited to share this with you. A bit of background on myself. I think this was pretty much covered, so I won't go into too much detail, except maybe I'll highlight a couple of things. I've been personally involved in over 120 MLI Select mortgage approval, so it's something we have deep expertise in. And then aside from multifamily, we don't do anything between 1 to 4 units or residential homeowner mortgages, but 5 or more units, and then also the other commercial asset classes. That's your retail, office, industrial, hotels, seniors, etc. The financing we do is construction mortgages. We also do bridge financing. That's interim financing when there isn't cash flow from the property, and then your typical permanent mortgages. And of course, we cover the whole country, including BC. So as mentioned, that I've personally been involved in over 120 MLI Select approvals, and that's a mix of purchases, construction, and refinances. So just an overview there. So let's get into CMHC specifically when it comes to 5 or more units. CMHC mortgage loan insurance. CMHC is Canada's only provider of mortgage loan insurance for multi-unit residential. So on the homeowner side, you have a few options. 5 or more units. If you're getting the mortgage insured, you have one option. CMHC provides access to preferred rates, so significantly lower rates than market. That lowers your borrowing cost. And that's the case for the entire amortization period of the mortgage, that your rates are going to be significantly below market. The program was launched in March of 2022. The government, through CMHC, launched this program, and really what they wanted to do is they wanted to incentivize 3 key social outcomes, one of which is affordability, the second is energy efficiency, and the third is accessibility. So the government really wanted to promote these 3 outcomes, and in return, they created a phenomenal program to really incentivize people to do one or more of those 3 things. So let's go through it. What do? They're providing up to 95% loan to value on construction or term mortgages. Now, keep in mind that's a theoretical maximum. It's also constrained by what's called a debt service ratio. In other words, the ratio of income from the property, or projected income if it's construction, to mortgage payment. So that ratio is still going to be there. But if it is, then you can get up to 95% leverage financing here. Amortizations can be up to 50 years as well. If the useful life of the building can support that, you can get up to 50 years. And what I'll get into as well is there's different tiers in the program. And if you get the top tier or the maximum benefits, that's where you can get up to 50 years. Interest rates are materially lower than the non-CMHC, and specifically with MLI Select, they're lower than standard CMHC. 5 or more units, as I said, and you can choose your outcome. So let's get into this. There's 5 different types of eligible buildings. Standard rental is your typical multifamily rental building. This also works for retirement homes, single room occupancy. So if people are renting individual rooms, that works as well. In a multifamily property, I should say, doesn't count towards single family. So there's supportive housing and there's student housing as well. In all cases, 5 or more units. Retirement houses, you need a little bit more, which I'll get into. What can you use this mortgage for? Well, you can use it to build multifamily housing, so construction financing. You can use it to buy multifamily. You can use it to refinance as well. You can also use this program to convert non-residential buildings to multifamily use. So for example, office to multifamily conversions are an example of how you can use this program, and also use it for improvements to multifamily housing as well. So let's get into some of the terms here. Retirement homes, as I mentioned, you need to have 50 or more units or beds. You also can't have more than 30% of non-residential space, or sometimes you'll have a mixed-use building. If you do, the commercial space can't be more than 30% of the entire square footage. There's also differences in how this program is administered between what's considered an existing building or what's considered new construction. And I'll get into the details a little bit later. And then There's differences in terms of there are actually certain types of mortgages where you may not even need to provide a guarantee, though you still need to qualify. You don't need to provide a guarantee. So I'll get into the details here. As I mentioned before, there's 3 key social outcomes. Affordability is defined as a percentage of units that are 30% or below the median renter income for a municipality. And I'll get into what some of those numbers are. Energy efficiency is defined as a percentage decrease in the energy consumption and the greenhouse gas emission for an existing building, or if it's a new construction, it's how efficient it is compared to the national building code. And what I really like about the Lower Mainland and BC in general is the building code is actually much more energy efficient in general than what it is in other parts of the country. And so energy efficiency is a way that we've done a lot of mortgages in the Lower Mainland and BC in general, because building to, for example, what's known as step code 3, if you built to that standard, that energy efficient standard, which soon is going to be in certain areas potentially a requirement for what you're going to have to do, then you can get points in this program. So that's a really popular way. We've qualified for the program in the Lower Mainland. And then accessibility as well. It's a smaller aspect, but if you have units that are considered, like I would call this handicapped accessible, then you can get some points in the program as well. And I'll get into what these points are, but essentially the government is CMHC is looking to really promote these. And if you can provide one or more of these, then you can have some fantastic benefits in the multifamily sector. So let's get into existing properties, the affordable category. So there's 3 key point levels or 3 tiers. 50 points is if 40% of the units in the property are designated affordable. And remember, that means that those units are at or below what is considered 30% of the median renter income in that municipality. And I'll get into what that is, but keep that in mind. It's how many units are at that level or below. And there's also a limitation on how much rents can increase for those units over the course of 10 years. Next, you have 60% or 80%. This is existing properties. Keep these numbers in mind. Now, if we get into new construction here, the numbers are significantly lower. So this is designed to encourage the construction of new units to help with the housing crisis we have. You only need to have 10% of the units being designated as affordable to qualify for 50 points if it's a new building, 15% for 70 points, and 25% for 100 points. I'll get into what these points mean, but remember, just keep in mind for now, the more points you get, the better the financing outcomes are that you can receive. In terms of other considerations, the commitment is 10 years. At minimum, you do get more points if you agree to 20 or more years of affordability. Now, the rents on those units, at the start, they have to be below that median renter income for affordable units, and they can only increase by provincial guidelines for rent control. And if in provinces where there's no rent control, then it's just the consumer price index or inflation. And keep in mind, the key here is that this rent increase guideline on...
We just noticed your slides that you have are not moving. So I think you're sharing a different screen. Yeah, it wasn't moving before. So we're just want to let you know.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me know. All right. Can you guys see this slide?
Yeah, now we can. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll just hop on this one. Apologies for that. I don't think there was much that you really missed from these slides. So these are the point levels I was referring to. So there you go. Okay, so let's get into the additional considerations then. So essentially, you have three considerations. Like I said, you got minimum 10 years. Rents can only increase by the provincial guidelines in BC or by inflation in other provinces. And then what I would say here is that these rent increases for units that are deemed affordable are in place regardless of if a tenant moves in or out. So it's the actual unit that's deemed affordable. So if you get a tenant that leaves, that rent increase guideline still applies, at least for that 10 years. At the end of the 10-year period, you can do whatever you want as you're allowed to, but for those 10 years, it's really crucial that you understand that if you choose to do affordability as one of your social outcomes in this program. Now I'll get into what is considered median renter income here. Now, as you can see, Vancouver here, $1,672 is considered affordable. CMHC doesn't differentiate between bachelors, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. So if you do have a bachelor that you can deem affordable at that level, then you can get some points in the program. And as you can see, if you are an investor elsewhere, then there's different numbers for different municipalities. So that's affordability for you. However, as I mentioned, in the Lower Mainland, energy efficiency is a really popular way to get points in the program. So 30 points you get 30 points if you have a 15% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions or energy efficiency from current performance. So in areas where you're renovating a building, and this can be things like improving updating the windows, I would say, or if you're putting low floor shower heads or low floor toilets, or programmable thermostats, or more insulation, or updated mechanical. These are all things that can improve the energy efficiency of a building and give you points in this program. 15%, 25%, and 40% gives you 30, 50, and 100 points on existing buildings. So this is if you have a building and you're agreeing to renovate it. On a new building, as I mentioned, it's compared to the National Building Code. So this is actually really nice in the Lower Mainland because you can have you tend to have newer buildings that are energy efficient anyway, so it works really nice here if you're either building something new, or even if you're buying a newly constructed building that was built, you tend to be able to get points in this program here. So this is a really nice element for this market here. I would say the other things to consider, it's evaluated based on a percentage decrease in energy consumption over past performance or the applicable building code, as I was mentioning, new construction versus existing. The energy changes must be evaluated by an energy auditor. Now, they're not measuring the changes after you do the work. They're basically saying, hey, if you replace the windows in this property, the energy efficiency should increase by 15%. And if you just replace the windows as you said you would to the standard you said, you get the points and you qualify. They don't have to go remeasure the energy efficiency there. It also counts if you've done some of these work in the previous 12 months. It counts, and you actually get 24 months after the loan is funded to do this work. So the loan doesn't actually have to wait for you to do this energy efficiency work to fund. The loan can actually fund up front, and you're given 24 months. Now, if you don't meet the requirements, you're in default, and it's not a good idea to be there, but just something to keep in mind. Accessibility, as I mentioned here earlier, it's something that you can have that can give you some points. And not as many points for accessibility, and this is handicap accessibility. There's certain building code standards that are looked at, and there's a certain level of what's called universal design. But what I really point people to if they're looking at doing accessibility is looking at what's called the Rick Hansen Foundation accessibility score. If you can look at that, if you can get anywhere from 60 to 80% on that score for your building, for work that you do to the building, then you can get 20 points. If you can actually get what's called gold standard for handicap accessibility, you get 30 points. So you don't have to do this. This isn't enough on its own to qualify for the program, but this is think of accessibility as kind of your top up for the program. Now, I've talked about different point levels and what you have to do. Let me get into what those point levels give you. So for existing properties, 50 points gives you a CMHC premium of 3.8%. That gets added to your mortgage. Similar to CMHC homeowner mortgages where you get premiums that get added to your mortgage, the same thing happens here. But what you'll notice is that these premiums are actually really low compared to non-MLI Select commercial mortgages. So 3.8% for 50 points. And the more points you get, the lower the premium gets. So regardless of leverage, it actually decreases the premium if you get more points. And you get more points by doing more of the things that I mentioned earlier. Now, the loan to value here, as I mentioned, you can get up to 95% if you have 70 or 100 points, and up to 85% with 50 points. But this debt service ratio column here, this is really key for this market here, because that's your ratio of cash flow to mortgage payment. It's got to be 1.1, which means $110 of income or $110 of cash flow from the property for every $100 of mortgage payment. This is likely going to be the limiting factor in this market, but depending on where you're investing, it could vary. So you may not always get up to 95%, but this ratio is your limiting factor. The ratio itself of 1.1 is much lower than other commercial mortgages which can range from 1.2 to 1.3. And the other nice benefit here is it's also easier to hit that ratio because your amortizations can be so high. So when you have higher amortizations, your payments come down. And when your payments come down, it becomes easier to hit this debt service ratio. So that's something to really keep in mind. One nice thing here, we say rental achievement may apply if it's a new construction. If you're buying a new build, you can actually buy a fully vacant building and get a fully funded mortgage on it, which was never the case in the past. Income used to be based on income for the property, and now they can go off of projected income, which is fantastic. I did mention limited recourse as well, which means you still have to qualify through net worth, and I'll explain how qualification works. It's essentially, instead of thinking about your personal income, the income component to pay the mortgage is covered from the building itself. So the building covers the income, but you still have to qualify through your personal net worth. And your net worth means the equity you have in your real estate, your investments in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, your cash, cash value of life insurance. There's, any lending that you've done, basically hard assets that you have that you can liquidate, and real estate is what counts towards your net worth. And you need to have a net worth of 25% of the loan amount you're going for. So if you're looking for a loan of $1 million, you have to consider having a net worth of $250,000. So sometimes it doesn't have to be. It may not be hard to hit, especially if you have some good net worth built up, and this includes equity in your primary residence, equity in other real estate portfolio properties. So keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to new construction, very similar as well, except here you're looking at, it says loan to value. That should actually say loan to cost. And your loan to cost here is up to 95%. So loan to value is not as much of a factor, but everything else is similar in terms of the benefits here. Now, what is considered new construction is you can actually buy or refinance a multifamily building that is already existing, as long as, and it can be considered new construction as long as it hasn't achieved 12 months of stabilized income, which means it hasn't been fully leased for 12 months. And if it hasn't been 24 months since the occupancy permit was received for the building, it's also considered new construction. So keep that in mind. If you are able to buy a new building, even if it's been built within the last 6 months or a year, it's not brand new, it can still be considered a new construction as far as CMHC is concerned, which can provide really good benefits. So keep that in mind. I have a comparison here of the MLI Select program, which is on the right-hand side here, up to 95% leverage. Prior to this program launching, CMHC did provide up to 85% leverage, but with up to a 40-year amortization. So keep that in mind. The debt service coverage ratio, as you can see here, is 1.1, which allows for much higher leverage as well, compared to the traditional CMHC multifamily program, which had a debt service ratio of 1.3 or 1.2. Standard mortgages that are commercial mortgages that are not CMHC insured, that leverage is typically 75%. And on multifamily, sometimes an exception that can go up to 80. Amortization is usually 25 years, can go up to 30 years. And the debt service ratio is 1.25. So you tend to be able to get much lower leverages in every other program. And the interest rate also is materially better for the CMHC MLI Select and CMHC in general. Now, I'll get into other requirements here. As I talked about, you need to have a net worth of at least 25% of the loan amount, and that also entails a minimum net worth of $100,000. You can't count certain things in your net worth, like cars. Also, if you have a whole bunch of RSPs, if you were to liquidate them, you would be paying taxes and penalties on them. So they're not counted at 100%. They're actually discounted by 50%. You have to have a reasonable credit score. 650 or more is the general guideline. But it doesn't make a difference if you're 651 or 800. It's not really going to make much of a difference. It's only an issue if it's really poor. If you don't have 5 years of management experience, you have to hire a property manager. Appraisals are required. Anything under 24 units, we generally recommend them anyway. Environmental site assessments, or they're also known as Phase 1 ESAs, are required as well. So that's high level of the program. I wanted to walk you through the process, which is generally collecting, and starts with collecting information on the property itself, and that's usually the rent roll, the operating statement, information on the borrower, so the company that has a property, the personal guarantors, the guarantors there, and some of the third-party reports I mentioned, like the appraisal and ESA. We then prepare a loan application, submit it, and negotiate directly with CMHC. Now, this is a really important point here. If you choose to work with a broker, it's really important to make sure that the broker you work with is applying directly to CMHC, not sending your information to a lender for the lender to apply on your behalf. It makes a huge difference because it's going to save you a lot in interest rate. You actually have the mortgage broker doing this for you, and it's much, much faster. Then you get a certificate of insurance, and that is the time when you can choose a lender. And this is where we get the approval from CMHC. We shop it around for a lender, and then we get quotes, provide term sheets, which eventually turn into an approval or a commitment letter. And then we work with lawyers to get the loan funded. That's typically what the process looks like. Now, as I mentioned, I pretty much covered this process here. There's a bunch of additional resources here, which I'll have shared with you guys, which is an article we wrote about this program, a few of them, an overview fact sheet, required document guide, the median renter income guide. So if you're in a rural municipality, for example, then there's different median incomes, which define what's considered affordable. Additional resources we'll send to you, as well as fees and premiums at a glance. We'll put together a bunch of YouTube videos on this program and multifamily financing in general. There's actually a calculator we have online you can use to figure out what you can qualify for from this program. And there's a net worth form as well that we can provide you with that gives you an idea of what you can qualify for too. So with that, I'll open it to questions. If anyone has questions on interest rates, we can get into that, but I sort of have that as backup. And if someone's a real life example, I can give you a high level example of something too. But that I'll open it to questions.
All right. Okay. So let's open it up. Does anyone have any questions about the MLI Select program? You guys can ask them, and I will reiterate them back. Kelly. So Kelly's asking if there's some advanced funds that you can get for things like architectural drawings and sorry, what was it? Soft costs.
Yeah, great question. So CMHC actually has a program called seed funding, and that's where you can actually, it's designed for funds that you can get that allows you to cover those soft costs pre-development. CMHC is actually just tapped out of those funds at this moment, so that isn't in place, but it may come back soon, and it's ideal. It's designed exactly for that. I would also say that there's land financing available in general that allows you to get those costs. So if you do have a program in place that you need to move forward on, that land financing is typically the best way to get some funds to cover those soft costs.
Okay. Any other questions? Kelly again. She's wondering, what are you looking at currently for an interest rate on the MLI Select?
Yeah, so I'll share my slides again. I wasn't sure if this would be covered or not, so let me share my slides and give you a very high level overview of what this looks like. Let me know if you can see. All right, can you guys see the slides?
Yes, we can. You bet.
All right, perfect. So interest rates as of right now, here's what they look like. So essentially, I'll point you to this section of the slide right here where it talks about CMHC.
Sorry,
CMHC spread.
Dre, can you just take us off the screen and put it full screen for just that? So put us at the small side. We're just going to adjust the screen so we can see it. There we go.
All right. So here's what interest rates look like right now. I do want to share that. I also want to educate you all on how to do this yourself, because they change constantly. So we have a tool on our website that you can track what are known as the bond yields. And the best bond yield to track for CMHC is known as the CMB. And the CMB as of today was 3.74. Spreads over that number are typically consistent, whereas the actual bond yield changes day by day. And so as of today, the bond yield is 3.74, and the spreads are between 0.4 to 1.25. So really broad spread, but the biggest driver of the spread is going to be your loan size. So, if you're going to be above 10 million in loan, you're probably 0.4. If you're under $1 million, you're probably 1.25 of the spread, which means that your 5-year interest rate today would be anywhere from 4.14 to just under 5%. And the 10-year is slightly higher than that. So depending on your loan size, these are the interest rates. But remember, these change constantly. And so if you can find a source for the Canada Mortgage Bond, we have one. And remember this high-level spread, 0.4 to 1.25. That's gonna you can always get this at any time. But this is what it looks like today.
Perfect. Okay. Any other questions? Is there any questions coming in from online, jury? Nope. All right. Kelly's got another one. So the question is, does this only apply for new construction, or can you refurbish an underperforming asset and apply for this?
Yeah, both. So you can, this allows you to build something from the ground up, but also existing assets can definitely qualify for this. So whether it's you need to refurbish it to qualify for the program, or it's an existing building that may qualify off the bat, both of them work.
Okay, perfect. All right. Any other last questions? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, thank you so much, Nadeem. We really appreciate you joining us here, especially an hour difference. So thank you. Give him a round of applause, guys. And,
thanks for having me, guys.
And if anyone needs to reach you, if they have any questions about the MLI Select, what is the best way that they can reach you guys?
Email is probably best, and we will. I think we shared it, but if you need, we'll share it again.
Yeah,
and,
throw it back up on the screen quickly. Everyone, grab your phones. You can grab a screenshot of it. Jury will just bring it up when you've shared it. There we go. There we go. Okay, guys, grab his information, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to them. And excellent. Thank you again so much, Nadeem. We really appreciate you joining us here today, and it was very, very valuable. I can see a few people got excited in the back there, especially when you said it's available on refurbishing buildings as well. I kind of saw some excitement, so that's excellent.
Thanks again.
All right, thanks. All right, we're going to bring back up my slides here, so let's go. Exit that. And then we're going to do some hot deals, and we're going to get you guys out of here. So present, share screen. All right. There we go. Okay, let's talk about some hot deals that are going on right now. And it wouldn't be right if I didn't bring up some hot deals that we've already talked about, but figured it's a good time to re-bring it up. Of course, we've got the opportunity that Trevor mentioned at the Gabriel. So if you guys are interested in finding out more information about the units they have available, if they qualify for the new program he talked about, feel free to reach out to one of us, whoever is your typical Kelly Fry Team realtor. We can get you more information on that. Of course, the big draw here, where did that slide go? Jerry, what happened to my slide about his promo? Okay, well, you guys all saw it, so we'll move on from there. There's a couple of other projects on the go right now that they've got some good promos on. This is City and Laurel. This is in Maple Ridge. Excellent building, excellent developer. Right now, there's only 2 spots left, but they got some blowout prices with $20,000 off right now. So if you're interested in taking advantage of that while they've got the discounts, make sure you guys let us know. And the last one is the Silver and Cedar. They've got, I've been told, 6 units left at $35,000 off the price. This is great. What's that? 3 now. Okay, so We got the email yesterday. They've already got 3 gone. So 3 left now with 35,000 off. Honestly, this is Redicop and Fay, one of my favorite developers that we've worked with Trevor's team. They do some fantastic projects. I'm currently in the process of selling some units in their last project that just closed, and it's fantastic. So another great project by them coming up in Mission. And for those of you guys who know me, you all know that I do really love the Mission market. So it's located off of Cherry Avenue and Cedar Street. There's literally a school right next door to it, so great location. And it's in a great developing area that you're going to see a lot going on there. Oh, there we go. So that was in the wrong spot. So that was supposed to be after Gabriel, but that's okay. Remember what the program was. If you guys are looking to get guaranteed cash flow, Gabriel's got 16 units that they're attaching this program to. If you want more information, please hit us up. We'll make sure to get you that info and which units are available on that. All right, we're going to wrap things up. Flip out your phones. Let's do some quick QR codes so you can get more access, more information. First and foremost, follow us on all of our social links. If you scan this one, we've densified it now. So instead of you having to scan like 6 different ones, you can scan one link to get access to all of our social channels. Follow us on social media. You'll see a lot of advice, tips, tricks, and of course, what's going on in different investment opportunities on our socials. And this is something that I want you guys to check out. If you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, if you guys are watching live and you're not subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But I'm putting out my predictions for 2024. This is going to be dropping tomorrow on my YouTube channel, premiering at 3 p.m. So go check it out, youtube.com/Cameron Manning, or you can scan that QR code. It brings you right to the video. And again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you're not already a member as well, if you're new here, we do have an online community as part of the bigger group here. So instead of just waiting for the monthly meetings, join us on Facebook. This is the Investors Performance private Facebook group. In this group, you have people who will drop in articles. Sometimes people will ask questions, as well as every single Monday, I do a Monday morning boots on the ground update. However, we are changing it. Used to be the Monday morning market update, but we are pushing it into the afternoon now. So now it's just the Monday market update. 2:30 p.m. live on Facebook. I'll be giving you guys the boots on the ground updates to feeling. The one thing about these events is we're showing you the data from the month before, but things do change sometimes pretty rapidly, and that's where you're going to get our sense of what's actually happening out there. All right, and that wraps it up. Our next meeting is going to be on February 15th. So make sure you mark it on your calendars. Either join us on meetup.com or on the private Facebook group. That is where we notify everyone about the upcoming meetings. And with that being said, we got a little bit more sandwiches. There's more cookies, drinks. Feel free, dive in, go meet somebody new, and thank you so much. And again, for everyone online, we really appreciate you joining us online as well. We would love to see you guys, if you're local, come out to a live event. So if you can make it out, we'd love to see you out. But again, we appreciate your support joining us online. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next month.